Hello and welcome. And today we have a special conversation on the topic of Lúnasa, the ancient festival that gives its name to the month of August in Irish. And joining me to talk about traditions and beliefs surrounding Lúnasa is Mag Eacháin, the author of this fantastic book, Ó Cheann Ceann na Bliana. Mag, chimmer tatu.
Tam go Niall, Cur Maggot as me a Ó Cheann an chláir seo inniu. I'm very happy to be here. Hopefully I can shed some light about the traditions, especially ones from the last century, hopefully, and even up until the modern day. So we'll see how we get on anyhow.
Yeah. I'm always myself very personally interested in the ancient history and very ancient things, but of course we don't have records from those times for the most part. So it is more talking about the more recent history and those traditions. But before we dive in, could you tell us a wee bit about yourself, your own background, and how you did come to write this book?
Yeah, I suppose I'm from Armagh, outside Armagh town just. And I was brought up there. I went to school there, and then I went on to Queen's, where I did a degree in Irish and Celtic, and then a master's, and then a PhD finally. And the PhD hadn't anything to do with folklore. It was on the dialect of a South East Ulster Irish, and how it died. So it was a very positive subject, of course, but it was interesting, and a lot of the sources actually, were kind of folk tales and kind of folk beliefs and that sort of thing, and that kind of, I already had an interest in folklore, I suppose, growing up, anywhere in the world, I suppose, but in Ireland, we have our own kind of sets of beliefs, and in Armagh, there are certain ones that are quite strong. Like, for example, even I would hear people up home talking about the cure still, for example, and yes. And actually, as a child, I actually got the cure twice. So, that's kind of a background of, of how you grew up and, how you kind of view things,
for anyone who was around in the 80s, we're not talking about the goth band, fantastic English band, but traditional cures that would might involve some prayers and some little performances.
Yeah, there was one involved, I remember, was the father of a girl that was actually in my primary school class. Her father came, and I think I had maybe ringworm or something like that. And we tried creams and different things. Obviously we tried them first, but he came and he spat on the thing, and he rubbed it in, and then he came back a second time to do that. And obviously at the time I didn't really realize what was going on, but now I know that it was probably fast and spit, so he probably hadn't eaten, and he comes and he spits on it. There's a special power in fast and spit, apparently. And then the second one was for migraine, because I had often migraines as a child, and it was a bit different in that we phoned a person in Achnaclois in Tyrone, actually, and I wasn't to thank them, I wasn't to say anything. They said something over the phone, and that was it. And that was my first kind of contact, I suppose, with that type of thing. And then after the PhD, I went to UCD at a postdoc, and then I finally got a job in Fiontar and Scoil na Gaeilge in TCU, and that's where it really kind of took off. My interest in the whole folklore and especially because as I started, we had just began digitizing the National Folklore Collection. And that was the school's collection, and I was kind of the editor, or one of the editors in it. So I spent every day kind of indexing and checking metadata and reading the stories, of course. So basically, the schools collection was a scheme set up in the 26 counties in the 30s, where the school kids went out and they collected folklore from their parents, their grandparents, their neighbours, and they collected a massive amount of information from every parish in the south of 26 counties. And it's all online, obviously, now, but I think there could be over 500,000 pages or thereabouts. And it covers everything, really, and I think that's where it really began, I would spend, time just checking stuff and reading stuff. And because, it was all online, it's all free, so easy to find anything,
I discovered it myself when I was in UCD, and I studied in that department, and I was working with that same collection, the schools collection, myself. And I remember sitting in a class one day and doing the maths in my head and thinking, I think my granny was the right age, because my mother's from County Galway. So I looked it up and I found my granny's handwriting, her homework from the 1930s, and one or two other relatives then. But sadly, my Tyrone family not represented.
No. But still, it's I don't have anybody in it, of course. But I used to receive emails from people saying that they'd found their mother's handwriting, and it was absolutely, it was amazing. Like it was great. Like to actually receive that. Even though I didn't have anybody involved in it, it was so nice. But so the project was within the National Folklore Collection, and I actually had over the years, with the research from the PhD, I'd actually met the folklore staff. I'd spent so many days traveling up and down, accessing material. So it was great to actually work with them again. It was an absolutely great team down there. And they're so helpful, that sort of way. And so that's how it kind of began. There are some books on, say, Lúnasa, St. Bridget's Day, and then there's a book in the English language by Kevin Tanner as well, here in Ireland, which is an amazing book. And I kind of thought that I wanted to do a book a bit like that, but in Irish. And I've also have an interest in holy wells. It's a thing that just kind of cropped up over the last 10 years. Just kind of anywhere, if I'm anywhere in Ireland, I'll try to find one, and I'll visit it. I'll take a few pictures. It's more of a hobby type thing, it isn't, but it's a great pastime, sort of way, because you get to see some parts of Ireland that you'd never see. You could be up a little back road, standing in a field behind somebody's house.
Different view of the locale, for sure.
That's it, So I was kind of wanted to bring the both in, because because as long as the main feast days, you have your quarter days, you have Imbolc, St. Bridget's Day, you have May Day, Baltanya, you have Samhain, which is Halloween, and you have Lúnasa, which is August, or the harvest. But you also have so many other days in between, and then on top of that, you also have the local days, which were important to people, where they went to their local well, and and they still do, and it's it isn't just a holy thing, or it's a community thing, where people just meet, and in the old days there might be a wee bit of drink, maybe, possibly some fighting as well, but sure, it happens, I suppose.
Nervine and Rain is she being in Chélam we.
For years,
so when the drop of drink is in, the sense is out. So that was the background, I suppose, to the book. And as I say, I was trying to incorporate both the holy wells and and I was wanting the school collections to be the center of it, because it was kind of 1936 and 37, 38. So it's kind of, it has been described as like a snapshot, it's, and there's great stories from the kids in Irish and English about how they spent
St. Patrick's Day, but how they spent St. Bridget's Day, how they spent Christmas that year. It's a brilliant, window. So I was trying to, focus on that basically, and then of course, because the 6 counties weren't involved, I had to try to get some sources from around that time as well, So there was a school collection in the north as well, around the same, in the 40s, I think. I think it's probably housed in the Irish Folk Museum, but there are a few articles that have been published, with bits on it as well. So I was able to use them because I had to include some things from 6 counties, obviously.
Yeah, and of course there were a few people from what we call the 6 counties who were involved in the collection of folklore too. There was Seamus of Dillarga, and
exactly.
Mara McNeil her dad was from Antrim too, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I know. It's actually, like at the time, I think they approached, had the ones in the north to try to get the scheme rolled out there, but whatever happened, it just probably wasn't the right time or the right timing. So, unfortunately, it wasn't involved.
Okay, so that's generally your own interest in how that developed in folklore and so on. And that's what we mean sometimes when we use the word folklore. It can sound like, are we talking about pixies and elves or something? But it's the folk, it's the ordinary practices and beliefs and customs of normal people, especially in a kind of slightly pre-modern age, although we still have modern folklore, I would say. But when people didn't have access to all of the latest scientific or medical information, there were different ways to interpret the world and the universe and how to survive and get through. So we're going to zero in on Lúnasa itself, and it's a well enough known word. It pops up from place to place. But could you tell us what was Lúnasa? We know that Lúnasa is the month of August now, but what was Lúnasa itself? You get any info on that?
Yeah, well, I suppose Lúnasa itself is said to come from Lugh or Lugh in Irish these days, who was Celtic deity, I suppose, and then the second part of the word is I suppose said or conjectured to come from a word which meant assembly or fair or that sort of thing. So it was basically an assembly which was set up by Lugh or Luke, and it kind of was associated with games and fairs and assemblies, basically. And of course, it is one of the quarter days of the Celtic calendar. And basically, it is the start of the harvest. Strangely, like it is used in the Irish language, to refer to the month. But at times, the English word might be used in Irish-speaking areas, possibly, but also there are other words used for the month, as in Achead Vid and Ord, the first month of the harvest. It is used in places instead of August or Lúnasa. So it's clear that it corresponds correctly to the start of autumn and the start of the harvest. Mostly the festival, I suppose, would have been around the 1st of August, probably back in way back. But over the years, it moved to the closest Sunday, I suppose. Which could be the last, which could be the last Sunday in August, or the last Sunday in July, or the first Sunday in August. And it goes under various names. The actual weekend or the day. Donach Crumdu would be one of them. Crumdu Sunday. Crum was like another kind of deity, like a archetypal pagan
Was Crumdu the figure that was kind of included in the stories of Patrick, and was kind of...
So it started off, I suppose, with Lou, probably would have been the main character, and then somehow Patrick comes into it, and Crumdu. So the story really, like, even in the west of Ireland, there was the story would be that Crumdu was, he starts out maybe as some sort of deity, and then, by the end he's a pagan ruler type thing. He's a man, and the story goes that St. Patrick was in the area, like somewhere in the west of Ireland. It's quite vague, and he's quite friendly with Patrick, at times, in stories, and he offers Patrick a quarter of a bull to eat, and to share with his followers. And the servant, Crumdu's servant, gives Patrick the quarter of the bull, and Patrick says "Geogracious," was half Latin, half Irish, for Weasley. And the servant, hasn't a clue what that means. He goes back to Crum, and Crum goes, "Well, what did he say?" And Crum says, or the servant says, "Actually, I haven't a clue. He said something, but I wasn't sure what it was." He goes, "Right, well, sure, go back with the second quarter of a bull." And he goes back with the second, gives it over to Patrick. Patrick says again, "Geogracious," and the servant back again to Crum. And he goes, I actually don't know what that means. Right, but she'll go back with a third. And back with a third. And the same thing happens again. So the servant goes back to Crum. Crum is raging at this stage, because he thinks that that he hasn't received the proper thanks for this animal. And he goes to Patrick then, and he knocks on the door, and he says, "I give you 3/4 of a bull there, and you didn't thank me for them. What's the story?" He was enraged. So Patrick goes, and he writes out the prayer 3 times. He writes out the prayer 3 times on a piece of paper, and he asks Crum, "Has he got 3/4 of a bull?" And he goes, "Right." So he fetches the 3/4 of the bull of some other bull, and he puts it on a scale. On the scales, and then Patrick gets the piece of paper with 3 prayers on it, and he puts it on the other end of the scale, and the prayers are heavier than the bull. So Crum sees this, can't believe it, and he converts. He isn't a pagan anymore; he's now a Christian. And that apparently happened around Donna Crumdu at the end of July, and that's why they go. And that's one of the stories.
Well, I like it's the kind of, why is today special? Well, this thing happened on this special day. And
that's it, so
you justify it, having the party.
Yeah. So, I mean, like the Crum Patrick thing goes back, I think probably 1,000 years nearly, but
it's interesting what you say about like these possible, pagan gods just becoming characters in folklore, because even our earliest versions of the mythology were written down by Christian monks. So they weren't trying to honestly depict the beliefs of non-Christians. So a lot of those figures, it's hard to know how the stories would have looked without the Christian influence there.
Yeah.
But some of the heroes were quite possibly gods in a previous era.
That's it. So, I mean, the previous story was probably with Lou and Balor, but somehow it changed to Crum and St. Patrick. So Donna Crumdu would be the most popular name, I'd say, in Irish for it. In English, then, Murdo McNeil, as you mentioned, who wrote the book on Lúnasa, I think she collected maybe 70 to 80 names, for that Sunday. And most of them are kind of local names, so they'd be named after where people gathered, you know, on certain mountains. Other names would be Garland Sunday, Garlic Sunday would be, you know, a variation of that. Garlic, yeah. I think it's you know, like a version of Garland. You know,
you know, people hear it and repeat it and
exactly.
repeat it wrong. And
Donach Cheann would be, you know, so the last Sunday of summer. Bilberry Sunday, Blaeberry Sunday, you know, because people will go gather bilberries. Hill Sunday, Loch Sunday, Mountain Sunday. There's Reek Sunday.
Those are the places they would go to celebrate then, the loch, the hill, the mountain.
Yes, so there'd be, so for example, I think in Fermanagh, I think it was called Bin Sunday, you know, in a part, but you know, because they went to a certain bin, as in a peak, like, you know, they went to a certain bin or peak to you know, to gather.
And
so
if I could mention one usage of the word Lúnasa that people might recognize internationally is there's a very famous play by Brian Friel, Dancing at Lúnasa. So it's a very famous, successful play in itself, but there was a movie made with, I think, Meryl Streep. There was, yeah. Haven't seen the movie myself, but it's a great play.
I have actually, yeah.
Yeah, but the play itself is mostly set in a family home, but they're talking about the other people in the village who are dancing, and it is very much up the mountains or up the hills or somewhere. It feels like, and set in the 30s again, but felt like some of the old pagan traditions are kind of under the surface there, I suppose. But that's one example with the slightly older spelling of Lúnasa there, of course, as well. But people might recognize that one.
Yeah, so I mean, it was kind of a time of year, as I say, it was the Donach Cheann, the last Sunday of summer, and they were kind of saying goodbye to summer, and they were coming into Fór or harvest.
So our word for autumn is essentially harvest, Fór, and it might surprise people, but it's how we tend to look at the seasons, that we consider autumn to begin in August. In a lot of countries, that's the height of summer. But for us, Lúnasa Man Fór Deirde Fór, it's in the name of the months there. Man Fór for September is middle, and Deirde the end of harvest. I think you had a version of August as well that was like the beginning of Fór.
Yeah, so and Shade V the Nor, I think they had in
Shade V the Nor, first month of harvest.
Yeah. So like, I mean, you find that that it is, you know, for us the start of the harvest, you know, and it was important, I suppose, because like the planting was done usually about March, April. You know, you had to have your planting done definitely by April, or you know, by the time the cuckoo would come, as they would say, or as you would call a cuckoo farmer, you know, and you were useless. And then, so you hope to have, you know, if you had a plan right, you would be starting to dig your potatoes maybe at the end of July for Donach Crumdu, Garland Sunday, whatever you want to call it. And if you had to dig it before that, you were kind of ashamed. You know, you would be kind of looked upon, you know, frowned upon nearly. You know, like you'd be called a needy farmer.
Oh, because you didn't have enough food, so you were digging a bit too early. Was that
exactly? Yeah, that's it. And then the person, you know, the farmer that hadn't got the new potatoes in time for Garland Sunday, was called Fermior Gihe, which is farmer, and then the word Gih, windy. You know, somehow it is an insult of some nature.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, like, you know, everybody was kind of looking forward to the harvest, you know, to Donach Crumdu.
I suppose that makes me think of, you know, the pressure around a modern festival like Christmas, and if you can't afford to have the Christmas that people expect, there's a lot of shame around that, you know.
Yeah, that's it. So I mean, like, you know, it was kind of like Chile was kind of, you know, like we kind of look forward, you know, to Chile these days. It's nice weather, you know, you could go off places. But back in the days, if you had no livestock, you know, and you were dependent on potatoes and grain, you know, it was a tough month, you know, because you were kind of, you know, your supplies were starting to go low, and you know, Chile was called Chile and Cabisha, Chile and Okrish, Chile and Gorta, so cabbage Chile, hungry Chile, because it was kind of, you know, say it was getting scarce, you know, the food was getting scarce. So you can kind of see why people looked forward so much to the start of the harvest, you know. And, you know, there was a saying down in Kerry is a Chilean cabbage August na brati nua. So cabbage July, August of the new potatoes. And again, August is used, or August, or I'm not sure how to say it, but, you know,
just the English word thrown in,
yeah. August na brati nua, August na grap, which is again is crap would be a word for potato. So you can kind of see why it was such a big deal, you know.
So once again, folks, for anyone watching, it does all come back to potatoes in the end.
It does. Yeah.
And cliches are true.
Yeah. And as I say, you know, once the last Sunday in July would come, or the first Sunday in August, you know, there'd be a rush on then to try to get the harvest taken in. You know, so they would, at the start, they would go out and they would take the first new potatoes, you know, or the new grain or the new fruits, you know, and they'd have a meal with that. Say, you know, they would have maybe champ and bacon or that type of thing. And then also, as I said, that there would be, you know, as well as having some sort of family meal, there would be a big focus on, you know, being out with the community, you know, so people would go out and would gather at certain places, and that may be something, you know, that, you know, it might be, say, Croagh Patrick, you know, where it has like a religious element, or it could be just on a mountain, you know, where they just gather, they have a picnic, they dance, sing, have a couple of drinks, whatever, play games.
Of course, for these outdoor spaces, I mean, it's the best time of year for weather, really. So they might have, it calls to mind like summer festivals.
Exactly, yeah.
Festivals and so on. It's a good time to go out and have a picnic, spend the night on a hill. Yeah.
So, like, I mean, there would be some, you know, like a big tradition would have been, you know, heading out on the hills to collect fruit, blaeberries or bilberries, especially frechens, as they're called in Irish. Frechen are, you know, there's several words for them. So that was a big thing, and it is in some places still. I think, you know, there is a like a bilberry Sunday. You know, they meet up and go out and they collect them, and they have a bit of a festival type thing on the side of a mountain. You know,
there's a phrase I think you used in your book, or Céad Turthaí an Óir.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, I suppose I was trying to think of a nice term for the, you know, it wouldn't be a word I would use every day in Irish, but you know, it explains it well. You know, it's the start. It's the very first things. It's the very first fruits, the first produce, and it was important, I suppose. You know, to celebrate it and you know, and that sort of thing.
So in the traditions, in the sources we have, what kind of things would have been going on to celebrate this time? We've heard before about fires at Bealtaine and even in other festivals like St. John's Eve and Samhain and so on. Would there have been a fire element at Lúnasa? Any mention of that?
I don't think it would have been popular. I haven't come across that many instances of it. I would have to check, you know, the Bible on Lúnasa, which would be Martha McNeil's book, but I don't think it's not really.
Not so much as the other ones.
Wouldn't be the main focus, it would be more assemblies outside on mountains. Outside there would be, so there would be fairs. Lammas fair would be Lammas would be would be an old English word for August or for the harvest. And there is still the Lammas fair is held every year up in Antrim in August. Other fairs, the kind of, there were still fairs, at the end of July, start of August. There would have been the gooseberry fairs. There would have been the puck fair even in Kerry. Even though it begins on the 11th of August, 11th, 12th, 13th, I think it is, or 10th, 11th, 12th, one of them. And it goes on for 3 days. That's the one where they capture a wild puck goat, and they honor him. But there is evidence, I suppose, that that it was probably held at the very start of August. With the change of calendar in the 1700s, the calendar changed.
Yeah.
So 11 days, I think, 10, 11 days. So so that would bring it back to the start of August. And it was kind of, even though it doesn't have any kind of Augusty type, or Lúnasa, kind of vibes that as such, as in there's no, it was probably was a fair for that time.
Was it a conspicuous time of year, so going way back, we could probably find more associations. We can see that.
Yeah, well, I suppose the first fairs were obviously Tailteann Games, and then I think there was some other medieval fair, which was fairly big. But up to the modern years, there were kind of smaller fairs, but there was the gooseberry fairs and Éanach na Spionán, which is in Cork, which would have been the gooseberry fair. Most things, though, I'd say probably would have been, the recreational side of it, just going out and dancing and collecting stuff and eating outside and having a good time, basically. I suppose the there was one, the Martha McNeil describes all these. Her book is based kind of on a questionnaire that was sent out by the Folklore Commission in 1942, and they received 316 responses throughout Ireland. So it covers north, south, east, west. It has everything in it. But she kind of focused on all the assemblies. So fairs are mentioned by her, and then she goes on to mention assemblies at lakes. And there's a great description of an assembly at lake in Westmeath in the Folklore collection. But there's also a great image. I think you have.
Yeah, I can show it here.
So this was from a book from 1837, and it says the pattern of the loch. And it's a description of Loch Sunday in Westmeath, and basically it describes how big the day was basically, as you can see in the background, there's tents. So there was tents, and there was marriage arrangements made, matches made. There was games, and the main thing was the swimming of horses across the lake. Loch Old, I think it is, Holland Yard direction. And there's a great description of a race. But this was kind of done, there was, as a, as spree or as entertainment. But, there was also a description from 1812 of Westmeath again, or this observer describes what he saw and why they did it. And he kind of was saying, that they race their horses in the water, or they bring their horse into the lake to kind of keep them safe for the next year and free from disease.
Oh, yes.
So, and the same actually, there was a well in Mayo, Loch Ceann, and it was a well, but also there was a lake, I think, attached to it or close to it, and the farmers and the local people were bringing their cattle for cures at it, and they'd also swim their horses in it again to keep them safe throughout the year and free from disease.
Definitely something we see at the other big quarter-day festivals too. It's like protecting the herd, or some sort of protecting the butter in the traditions too.
Yeah.
Whatever the family. I mean, this is what the economy was based on. Basically, that's what survival was based on.
Yeah. Actually, the well in Mayo, the Loch Ceann place, actually, as an offering, what you'd leave in a well, you might leave money or a medal or something, but as an offering of that well, it would actually put in butter at that well, like to make sure that the cattle had a strong produce that year of milk and butter. So yeah, it's interesting. It all comes always back to butter, butter and potatoes.
Yeah. So no complaints from me on that front. No. I think we have a couple of pictures of St. Ciarn's well here too. I could share.
Yeah, but actually,
that's the ones that you have.
Yeah, so that would be St. Ciarn's well in Meath, which is a big day. Okay. So as you can see there, I went to that. I think that was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. So it's up outside Kells in Meath, and I have it in my book, but I've read so much about it. I'd been it once before in January, and there wasn't anybody about. But I heard that they still had the pattern, as we call it, as the kind of August gathering. So I went up. I was a bit curious. It's about less than an hour's drive from here. So I went up. I think I arrived about 2:30, 3 o'clock, and I think the thing was started at 2. But as part of it, I think there was mass, and as you see, there was a big crowd there. It's a fair crowd, kids and older people, and
chairs out too. They're prepared.
Chairs out, and everybody just after the mass. There was, they just sat and enjoyed themselves. A few people drank from the well. The well is in the middle there. You can see the tree, and then over to the right of that, you can kind of see the. It's like a rocky outcrop. It's kind of a strange place. It's and each of them is kind of a well. Where you can get a cure for headache or toothache, your feet even. Yeah. So there's actually a person actually drinking the water out of the well. But it was great to view it, as an outsider, and then I was talking to a few people, and they were all friendly, and they were kind of, and then after that there was a tractor pull, so all the old tractors came past, and then part of that again, the young ones had their toy tractors, and they had a race up the road, so it was
games as well.
Yeah, it just seemed like a great day out, that sort of way.
So it's fascinating because we could read about these things in our books and so on, again, like this, but it's great to see the tradition still alive. And those of things which are very, very old.
Yeah, so I mean, they have the festival that well, or the festival was mentioned for June, but they also went on the first Sunday in August, the first Sunday of the harvest, as it says in a few of the stories. And if you were there for midnight on the night of the harvest, of the first Sunday of the harvest, you might see 3 fish. Apparently, if you saw them, then you got cured of any disease or any sickness you had or any worries you had. So after I read all them stories, I was like, I have to go visit this place. It's kind of it just seemed brilliant. So I think that was 2001, 2002. It was a great insight into how it still survives.
I wanted to ask that too, because I suppose in our records, would it be fair to say that the Lúnasa festival was celebrated, all across Ireland, and how late did that survive? Which areas did it survive in? Is it more in the countryside, I imagine? Or?
Yeah, like, I mean, it definitely survived well into the last century. I suppose up to, throughout Ireland, there's stories of definitely up to the Second World War, say, it's like the first half of the last century. And as you saw in the pictures there, like, there are places where it still goes on. But it would have been traditional throughout. People would have met like all over, like Ulster, Munster, Leinster, Connacht, everywhere. And I'd say like Reek Sunday is still a big thing. Obviously, Croagh Patrick is one of the biggest days where people still climb up to the top, and again, it's kind of, I'd say it's probably the most popular or the most one you see, but there are ones, like there is an interest in it, I think, as well. Just even the gathering of people together, like bilberry picking, stuff like that. Like, I mean, I think I've won there. I sent you pictures of St. Patrick's Well in Tyrone.
Yes,
and I've visited it. I think it was the start of August 2 or 3 years ago again. Though I don't think it kind of. Don't think it still goes on, even though the well is so the well at St. Kieran's, for example, is a spring well. This one here, so that's the actual well, is the top hole, which is a bullan well. So it's kind of, the well is the water that gathers in the bullan, which is from Irish bullan. And the water is supposed to stay in it all year. It's never supposed to go dry, and it has a cure for warts. And it's kind of even though there wasn't a crowd there on the August weekend that I was there, there wasn't everybody there, but there was a rag tree, and there was rags on it. So that's St. Patrick's chair. And I don't think it has any real kind of historical, but it has been around for a long time, but it may be man-made. So that's St. Patrick's chair. The best thing with this place is the place name, and everything is kind of linked back to St. Patrick and the well, like Alta Davin, or Alta Davin, I think is what you call it. So it's Alta Jowan.
Alta Jowan, I would say in Irish, yeah.
So Alt would be a ravine. So ILLT would be like a ravine or a glen, and then Jowan would be like a demon. And the story goes that St. Patrick, obviously, as he did, he chased a serpent demon from there into a lake nearby. So everything comes back. It's a great site. It has everything. It has.
I think my sister might have been there because she's done a lot of exploring of local sites. She loves to go walking and so on. But I've been away from home a long time, so I need to go back and see that one myself.
Yeah, it's a great spot, and I mean, I have it in my book, but I was intrigued by it because there's a great description from, I think it's Kathleen Sweeney from a primary school nearby, and she says, Alta Davin still holds a high place in the popular respect for many miles around, when crowds assemble at the time that the blaeberries are ripe, which usually falls about the last Sunday in July, the first Sunday in August, known in the district as the Big Sundays. Last Sunday was one of the big Sundays. I was there and I saw the crowds of boys and girls, all enjoying themselves, laughing, courting, singing and dancing, some picking the ripe blaeberries, some climbing up St. Patrick's chair, all wearing happy faces and enjoying themselves. So it's a great description. It's so.
It sounds like a festival, a day out.
Yeah. So that's from a schoolgirl aged about 11. Described how she spent the Big Sunday, as she called it, in 1937-38. So it was still going strong in places, and it is still in places, obviously, but I wouldn't be 100% sure. Just unless you're from us, an actual area, it's hard to know, it was widespread, so there was the assemblies on the hills, assemblies on the lakes, assemblies at Wales, as I've seen, and the assemblies of the Wells, I think, are still popular enough, you know, or have been revived maybe in the past while. But yeah, it's you know, it's a great when you know, when you actually visit a place, you know, and you have a description like that, you know, and you know, it adds so much to it, you know.
Yeah, sometimes historical sites can be a little bit quiet and overgrown or deserted, and it's hard to picture that they were bustling hives of activity at one point. But yeah, to put
exactly,
the text is good.
Yeah. You know, and like as I say, you know, there, you know, it has kind of a lot of the sites that I discussed in my book, like the Holy Wells, you know, for that time of year for Tona Crumdu, a lot of them have a connection with St. Patrick, you know, and there's a few of them mention Crum. You know, he was on his way to or that he was on his way to Croagh Patrick, you know, and the story might be in Calvin, you know, but there's kind of connection, you know, and he dismissed serpents, or he done this and done that. But St. Patrick is popular, you know, with regard, you know, that time of year.
Well, so, it may sound a bit trite, but in folklore, the stories of heroes, they really remind me so much of modern superheroes, where you have, everybody knows about Batman and the Joker, let's say, but we've seen so many different iterations, and different people have told the story in different ways, or whether it's Superman or whichever figure. And so Crum will pop up against Patrick as an enemy, as an adversary, in different stories, in different places, even. And
well, I mean, the story of Crum and the bull as an offering, you know, it's found in other places in Ireland too, you know. And there's a place in West Kerry actually where it's the exact same story is told. St. Patrick's not mentioned in it. I don't think it's local monks.
Yes.
You know, and he, I think he says something like, you know, I think the monk goes and asks him for the bull, and Crum, thinking, well, the bull is angry, you know, it's in a field, but you'll probably kill the monk. So he goes, yeah, work away, you know, if you can catch the bull, you can take him away, you can have him. Yeah. And the monk walks into the field, and the bull's calm, and he puts the rope over the bull and walks off. And Crum is furious again, you know, sort of way. But it's the exact same story of the prayer is put on the side of the scales. But
yeah, it's the power of Christianity is outweighing the older power. Yeah.
And the place down in West Kerry, Clachan, I suppose, it's when you're heading out West Kerry, they actually, in the church, you know, where they actually gathered as well, you know, on the same Sunday, you know, there was a head, you know, like a stone head in the wall. Okay. I think it's since been stolen. I'm not sure if it's been returned, but the stone head was said to be Crum. You know, it has a, you know, like a very eerie looking face, you know, but it's supposed to be Crum.
And perhaps some of our viewers would recognize this word Crum, because it does pop up in the Irish language a little bit. There's a kind of interjection. You could say Dar Crum.
Yeah.
For a way of saying, "Oh my God!" Or, in Anim Crim. So it's still in the language a little bit. So this figure Crum has survived down.
He has, yeah. He has.
Well, we should sing a hintach fad. Gurmila Mahigat. So interesting, and it's great to get an insight into how all of those traditions have survived and so on. Crahar, if people are interested in following up on the topic, of course, there's your brilliant book, Ó Cheann Ceann na Bliana, Nósanna and Éilire in Éireann, so traditions of the calendar in Ireland. And it's a fine big book, and it's organized by year, so it's a great reference book. But so apart from that one, are there any other sources that you would recommend to the
I mean, obviously, like, I mean, as I say, the the vessel customs are, you know, you could either write a short article on them, or you could write, as part of Niall did, she wrote over 600 pages on Lúnasa. You know, it is an academic book, but it's also out of print, unfortunately. So if it was come back into print, it would be great. I don't even have my own copy. You know, it was out of print for a while. But it's amazing as a reference book. It is, you know, it's probably one of the best. You know, it's an amazing book. If you just want kind of, you know, like later reading, you know, and if your Irish isn't as good, possibly, you know, there's The Year in Ireland by Kevin Danaher, which is in English, and he has Irish text in it. You know, his book kind of covers, you know, the modern times, maybe from the 17th, 18th century. You know, you know, up until, like, you know, the time whenever he was around as a folklore collector, and he's great because he, you know, he kind of came from that era, you know, and he had such an interest in it. You know, like, I mean, he's from West Limerick, you know, so he grew up at a time when most of the traditions were still about and still strong. It's a great book for, you know, for the whole year, basically, you know. And it's just back in print, actually, which is good, because it was out of print, and it's back in print. I think it's Mercier, maybe, but and it's reasonable. It's 15, 20 euros, possibly.
That's a great tip, I think.
Yeah.
And there's also, of course, there's duchas.ie close to both.
Yeah.
This is where the National Folklore Collection can be viewed from abroad.
Yeah, I'd say you know, there are some great kind of descriptions of the Garland Sunday. If you search different terms of Garland Sunday or Donacrumdu or Garlic Sunday or Bilberry Sunday, and then, you know, so there's the schools collection, and then they're adding the main manuscript collection too, which is getting added to it. So it's kind of you should probably leave yourself some time if you want to go on that site, because once you go on it, it's kind of the rest of the day might be gone. It's kind of,
your family don't see you for 2 to 3 weeks.
Exactly, yeah. Out in the office here, you know, growing a beard.
And you're working at the Royal Irish Academy at the moment.
I am,
right?
yeah. So I finished up with Conchúr in 2001, maybe 2002, and I went on. I got a job as assistant editor on the Folklore Start on the Gaeilge, which is the historical dictionary of the Irish language, which is a project of the Royal Irish Academy, where we are writing a historical dictionary of Irish. So from 1600 to I'd say 2000. So it's kind of it'll show, you know, the meaning of words, but also usage of words, and maybe how that usage has changed over the last 300-400 years. So it's kind of project. Yeah, it's a big project, you know. Again, you know, and it'll be a few years in the making, you know, sort of way. But yeah, so you know, at the minute we're building up a corpus of texts, yeah, and it's very nearly complete. You know, as I say, dictionaries back in the day, you know, were kind of made on slips. You know, you used to have slips, you know, words and slips, but that's kind of all changed now. You know, it's all corpus based and based on usage and you know, it's obviously with computers, you know, it's kind of it's helped things, you know.
Yes, it's amazing how we can kind of put all the information together.
Yeah, exactly. You know, which is a great job for me, because I kind of love that type of thing. You know, kind of exploring words and their usage and, you know, that sort of way. So, unfortunately,
so it sounds like a really valuable task, a real contribution to the language itself.
Yeah, that's it. You know, so yeah, all been well. You know, it'll be completed at some stage in the future. You know, but it's a big task, but it has to be done, I suppose. So yeah, so that's about it. You know.
Okay, well, fantastic. Thank you so much for all, and so we will leave it there. Slán live.
Slán
Transform your Irish language journey in 1 week. Take the Gaeilge Gach Lá 1 week challenge starting Monday. It doesn't matter if you're just starting off, coming back to Irish, or you're already an active learner. Go to challenge.irish or click the link in the description.